All right, Shabbos, say good morning. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning's share. To thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Menachem Av, Benjamin and Elise Wall of Netanya Eretz Yisrael, for dedicating all of his Shumer Drushos this month in honor of Moshe Ibnson and Jeremy Lassen, who enable all of those outside of our physical base measures to participate in our shiurim. To thank Jack Bennett for dedicating all the Shumer Drushos this month in memory of Sergeant Nikolai Rappaport of the Givati Brigade, who died in a Hezbollah ambush in southern Lebanon on February 7th, 1998. To thank our Week of Learning sponsors, Nathan and Beth Adler, in memory of Nathan's father, Ben Adler, Achavar Baruch Mordechai Ben Moreno Rav Nosson, on the occasion of his first yahrzeit on the 23rd of Av. And to thank our Daf Yomi sponsors for today, Dr. Mark and Elsa Lussman, in commemoration of the yahrzeit of Dr. Lussman's mother, Ann Lussman, Chana Rachel Bas Avram Alter, whose yahrzeit is on the 21st of Av. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of the Neshama Slav and Aliyah and the families in Nechama. But with that, let us begin. We have a lot to do today, exciting daf ahead of us today. Today's daf is Pei Dalet 84, and we are picking up on Pei Gimel Amud Beis 83b, and we're actually picking up Na'ana Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, about 18, 19 lines up from the bottom. So as I remember again, in yesterday's daf, we spent actually the majority of the daf speaking about 4 different objections to the position of Rabbi Eliezer. Right? Rabbi Eliezer in the Mishnah said that if a man says to his wife, Hari'at mutaris l'chol adam chutz mi ploni, right, we're divorced, and you're permitted to every man with the exception of Shimon. Right? Chacham say that's not a divorce. Rabbi Eliezer says it works. We then lodged four points of opposition, right? 4 different Rabbanim came and opposed the position of Rabbi Eliezer. To which the Gemara then said, you might be right, but ve'in mashivan asari la'achar misa. You can't go ahead and you can't contradict the lion after he's dead. In other words, Rabbi Eliezer could have defended himself. The Gemara, if you remember again, Rava said in yesterday's daf that the truth is 3 out of the 4, one could refute them. The one that you can't was Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah. So the Gemara says, not Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah, va'amar krisus, Davra Koris Beino Lebeino. Remember, Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah's his refutation of Rabbi Eliezer is pretty straightforward. He says at the end of the day, Torah calls the get a Sefer Krisos. What's a Sefer Krisos? Something that creates a division, closes the marriage. Obviously, if he's going ahead and he's stipulating who the wife could marry, who she can't marry, then that's not a proper Krisos. Chalamarata she'en ze Krisos. I've Rabbanon high Krisos my Avdile. What do the Rabbanon do with this concept of Krisos? They go ahead and they use it for the following case. What is this? What happens if a husband, Reuven is married to Rachel, Reuven is now divorcing Rachel. Reuven says, this is your get, on the condition that you don't drink wine, or on the condition that you don't go to your father's house forever. Ain't the krisos. This is not krisos. Shloshim yom. If he says he can't do it for 30 days, harei krisos. Ultimately, that is krisos. So it's interesting. That's what the Rabbanan do with Sefer Krisos. You could put a Tanai into a get. But the Tanai can't last for the duration of her life. So if it's a timed Tanai, then that would work. Bi'idach. The other Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah would say, Mikaris krisos nafka. Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah says, you could learn that from the fact that the Torah calls it a Sefer Krisos, whereas the Torah could have just called it a Sefer Kares. The fact that it goes ahead and discusses the prolonged form, or uses the prolonged form, enables you to learn out both of these things. Number 1, he cannot stipulate whom she can and cannot remarry. That's number 1. And number 2, any Tanai which lasts the duration of her natural life is going to be a problem in the Krisos. Okay, the Idach, the Rabbanan will say Kares Krisos Lodash. They don't make that drasha of Kares Krisos. Amar Rava. So I'll say some other cases. We already saw in yesterday's daf that we paskin against Rabbi Eliezer, and that we paskin like the Rabbanon. Fine. Amar Rava. Interesting case. Reuven's divorcing Rachel. He says, this is your get on the condition that you do not drink wine for the rest of my life. That's what Reuven is saying. The rest of my life. So ain't ze krisos. So ultimately, again, this is not krisos. Kol yimei chaye ploni. If he says, Rachel, you can't drink wine the rest of, Levi's life, then ultimately, again, that works. So understand, Maishna chaye ploni, the dilma mais. So Maishna chaye ploni. Why is it that if he attaches the Tanai to the lifespan of Levi that it works? Because Levi might die. Levi might die. Says the Gemara, you can make the same argument. If he attaches it to his lifespan, he might die also. He might die also and fulfill the Tanai. You're right. The Gemara says you're right. First, why line above in the bottom? Kol yimei chayechi ein ze krisos. Kol yimei chayei o chayei ploni arei ze krisos. So most of this goes to what we just said before. You're right. If he says to Rachel, this is your get on the condition that you don't drink wine for the rest of your life, that is not a proper get because that lacks the element of krisos. If he says you can't drink wine for the rest of my life or the rest of Levi's life, that is krisos. So we'll say what you begin to see over here is as follows. The definition of krisos, a get, cannot hold something over the wife for the duration of her life. And if it does, then that's not a get. Because a get is something that by definition brings closure to the marital relationship. How is that manifest? He has no control over her in any way. No control over her. So therefore, again, whether he says, this is your get on the condition you can't marry Shimon, that's not krisos. Or even if he says, this is your get on the condition that you, or this is your get on the condition you can't drink wine for the rest of your life. He's maintaining a hold on her for the rest of her life. So ultimately, again, that is a fundamental erosion of the concept of krisos, and therefore will undermine the validity of the get. Incredible. Let's go. Most of it's fascinating. Listen to this case. Hayom at ishti ulamachar at ishti mahu. We'll say, watch this case. Reuven is married to Rachel. Reuven says to Rachel, Rachel, today I'm giving you a get on the condition that today you are not my wife, but tomorrow you will be my wife again. Today you're not my wife. Tomorrow. Whatever, he has a trade show in Vegas, right? Right, everyone, right? So everyone except the rabbinate has a trade show in Vegas. It's incredible to see. So the Maisa again. So the Maisa, what happens? He says, today you're not my wife. Today you're not my wife. Tomorrow you are my wife. So I'll say, what? And I just want to be clear. He's giving her a get. Right? So this is a condition, it's a conditional get. A conditional get. So he's giving her the get, today you are divorced, tomorrow again you're my wife. Mao, what's the halacha say in such a situation like this? So Tibai the Rabbi Eliezer, Tibai the Rabbanon. So Rabbi say this is a shaila both according to Eliezer and the Rabbanon in the Mishnah. How so? So Tibai the Rabbi Eliezer, Ad Kano Kama Rabbi Eliezer Hassam, Ela Dilma de Kashari Shari the Olam, Aval Hacha Lo. So Rabbi say, maybe here's the difference. Rabbi Eliezer in the Mishnah who says that Allah Lamaisa, a husband could say to his wife, this is your get and you are permitted to every man except for Shimon. But that's because when he permits her to everyone else, she's permitted forever. Over here, he's permitting her, so to speak, for a day, and then ultimately again saying they're remarried. Maybe even Rabbi Eliezer would say that's not a good divorce. Furthermore, Tibay the Rabbanon, Furthermore, again, I will say, maybe it could be even according to Rabbanon, because according to the Rabbanon, ultimately, again, the reason why the case in the Mishnah doesn't work, where he permits her to everyone except for Shimon, is because ultimately, again, there's not a full divorce. There's not a full krisos. Aval hocha kevan de pascha. So I will say, in this case, maybe according to the Rabbanon, the divorce does work. Why? Because when he divorces her today, I will say, what's the status of their union? Fully dissolved. And maybe since it's fully dissolved, the Rabbanon would agree that it is a good divorce. To which the Gemara said, Basar Devaya Hadib Hashta, after they asked the question, they answered, Tap of Pei Dalid, Mistabra, Bein Rabbi Eliezer, Bein Rabbanon, Kivin de Pascha. According to both opinions, Rabbi say, once he divorces her, she's divorced. So Rabbi say, essentially what happens here is as follows. What the Gemara is suggesting is like this. Once he gives her a get and he says to her, you are divorced to me today, that's it. That's it. Once there is a complete divorce, even though he's saying in the same breath, but tomorrow we are remarried again, he can say whatever he wants. He can say tomorrow, you're a watermelon. It doesn't make a difference. Lemaisa, once he goes ahead and he says to her, we are divorced, and it is a full-fledged divorce, and he gives her a get, any follow-up t'nai that goes ahead and says, then we're going to be remarried, is an ineffective statement. That's what it means. Kevan de paska, paska. Once the marriage has been dissolved, the marriage has been dissolved. So I will say, interestingly enough, it turns out that everyone agrees in this case that halacha l'maaseh, the divorce is a valid divorce, and the t'nai essentially is ineffective. Now, it happens to be the Rambam has a whole discussion on this about safek migureshes. We're not going to get into it now. For our purposes, we're just going to go with the maskana of the Gemara, that once you dissolve the marriage is dissolved. The marriage is dissolved, and any subsequent statement that we're going to be remarried tomorrow is an ineffective statement. Incredible. Incredible. So interesting, I will say. Reuven gives Rachel a get. This is the exact opposite of the case in the Mishnah. Right? Reuven gives Rachel a get. He says, this is your get on the condition you marry Shimon. Shimon's a good guy, or maybe Shimon's not a good guy, right? He deserves you, right? So the mice, again, he says to his wife, I'm divorcing you on the condition that you marry Shimon. So what's the halacha in such a situation like this? Harezu lo tinase. She cannot marry. Now, both say, it sounds, we're not sure exactly who she's not remarrying. But okay, she should not remarry. The mises lo teitze. But if she did marry, she doesn't have to leave her husband. So my kamar, what are we saying over here? So let's listen to this. I'm Rav Nachman. So we're going to go through a couple of iterations of this, of the explanation here. So just get ready for a little bit of back and forth. So I'm Rav Nachman. Hachikam, that's what it means to say. Harezu lo tinase lo. So the halacha is she can't marry Shimon. Why? Shema yomru nishehen nosnin b'matana. Lest people say that men are gifting their wives away to others. They both say, it doesn't look right. Right? It doesn't look right when Reuven goes in and divorces his wife and says, "This is your get on the condition that you marry Shimon." What's going on there? He's giving his wife over to Shimon. That doesn't look right. So therefore, again, halacha l'maisa, she's not allowed to marry Shimon because it doesn't look right. V'im nises la'achar, but if she ended up marrying someone else, she ends up marrying Levi. Lo teisei, she doesn't have to leave Levi. Gemara says, whoa. I don't understand. How could she leave Levi? How could she marry Levi? There's a Tanai in this get. There's a Tanai. I'll say again, whether you like the Tanai, you don't like the Tanai, he made a Tanai. So now he said, this is your get on the condition you marry Shimon. She goes in and marries Levi. We're going to let her marry Levi because of a rabbinic prohibition? To which the Gemara says, because remember, again, I will say, Mida Oraisa, this is a valid get. The Rabbanon say, don't marry Shimon because it looks like Reuven is gifting his wife to Shimon. Fine, I understand that, but how does that give her a license to marry Levi? Right? At the end of the day, non-compliance with Tanai means that she's still married to Reuven. To which the Gemara says, Elam Rav Nachman, Hachi Kamer. This is what it means to say. In reality, in this case where Reuven says to Rachel, this is your get on the condition that you marry Shimon. So I say, so step one, she can't marry Shimon. Why can't she marry Shimon? Rabbinic prohibition, it looks like Reuven is gifting his wife to Shimon. That's number one. The mises lo teisei. But if she does marry Shimon, she doesn't have to leave the marriage. She doesn't have to leave the marriage. The mishum gezira lo mafkinon. Why? Because of a rabbinic gezira, we're not going to make her leave the marriage. So we'll say, so ideally, we don't want her to marry Shimon because it doesn't look right. But if she did marry Shimon, we will not make her leave the marriage. Ha la'ach, as the Gemara says. Good. Amalei Rava. So Rava said to Rav Nachman, Lohu de lo tinase. So it sounds like what you're saying is she shouldn't marry Shimon. Ha la'achar tinase. But she can marry Levi. So the Gemara said, well, 1 second, but how can you do that? She has to fulfill the Tanai. What about the Tanai? V'chi tema, maybe you'll say, there is a way to fulfill the Tanai. How do you do it? V'chi tema, afshar de minsa b'hayom, u'megar shalamachar. Let her marry him today, and he could divorce her tomorrow. He could divorce her, or both say, she can, watch what the Gemara is saying. She could marry Levi. She can marry Levi. Why could she marry Levi? Because she could always fulfill the Tanai at a later time. right? Let her marry Levi today, so to speak. She'll get divorced, tomorrow, and marry Levi. In other words, what that means is, since at some point in time she can fulfill the Tanai, so maybe we're okay with letting her marry Levi, as long as at some point in her lifetime, she does go ahead and marry Shimon, fulfill the Tanai, and therefore the get is going to be good retroactively. To which the Gemara says, "Ulahach the plugis alei Rabbi Yehuda kamedamisle," and you are comparing this to the person who argues in Rabbi Yehuda. Who argues Rabbi Yehuda? So I'll say, watch this. De'itmar konam einai bishina hayom imashe lemachar. Well, it's the interesting case. Person says, literally konam, right? They both say lashon of neder, right? A person says, I hear sleep should be konam. Sleep should be usher to me today if I sleep tomorrow. See the case? Right? Sleep should be prohibited to me today if I end up sleeping tomorrow. So we'll say, what do you do in a case like this? Rabbi Yehuda, al yishan hayom, shema yishan machar. Rabbi Yehuda says, don't sleep today. Don't sleep today, lest you come to sleep tomorrow. Rav Nachman says, not a problem. Sleep today, vein choshishin shema yishan machar. Sleep today, and we're not concerned you're going to sleep tomorrow. In other words, you can sleep today, and we're confident that you won't sleep tomorrow. So Rabbi says, the Gemara is suggesting over here, maybe we're holding like Rav Nachman. Essentially what Rav Nachman says is, don't worry about today, right? Don't worry about it. I should say, really, don't worry about tomorrow, right? Tomorrow you'll do what you have to do. Today, do whatever you want to do. It's the same idea, it's quite a stretch, but same idea. The Gemara is saying, let her marry Levi today. What's the big deal? Tomorrow, she'll marry Shimon. Right? At a certain point in time in the future, she'll go ahead and she'll marry Shimon. Don't worry about today. Tomorrow you'll take care of what you need to take care of. We'll say, by the way, it's such a fascinating life machlokes, right? In other words, he'll say, if you know that you have something, right? So in this case over here, I'm making a neder that if I sleep tomorrow, sleep should be prohibited on me today. So the question is, I was saying, how far do I have to worry about tomorrow? How far do I have to worry about tomorrow? So you have over here, so Rabbi Yehuda is saying, you absolutely have to worry about tomorrow today. So therefore, don't sleep today, lest you come to sleep tomorrow. Rav Nachman says, don't worry about it. Worry about today, worry about tomorrow. Right? If you spend today worrying about tomorrow, first of all, you can't go ahead and control tomorrow, and you end up losing out on today. Right? So ultimately, again, so we'll say, right, the famous Maimar Chazal, don't stop thinking about tomorrow, right? So apparently, not everyone agrees with that statement of Chazal, right? Rav Nachman will say, stop thinking about tomorrow. Stop thinking about tomorrow. Again, we'll say it's such a. Obviously, the answer is finding somewhere in the middle, right? Because to be only present focused and not worried about the future is a shtickle irresponsible. To only be future focused at the expense of the present, ultimately, again, causes you to lose out on life. But there is something incredible that Rav Nachman is saying is, let today be today, right? And tomorrow will be tomorrow, right? Maximize today. Tomorrow, you'll figure out when tomorrow comes. I'll say, it's also an interesting, so I think we recognize this as we get older as well. There's another reason why you can't really plan for tomorrow, because the truth is you have absolutely no idea what tomorrow is going to look like. I was driving to shul this morning, and I'm sure, I don't know if anyone lost power. Right? So there are a lot of people without power, and it's fascinating. You think about it, that yesterday, right, people made plans for today, for Tuesday. They made plans, right? And I'll say, now what happened? Now what happens for many, those plans are like, no, we're shelving that. We've got no power. Right? You've got no power. We have suddenly again to figure out what are we doing with the refrigerator? Right? What are you doing with this? What are you doing with that? So it's just fascinating how sometimes again it's not just the pshat that you shouldn't worry about the future because it comes at the expense of the present, but it's something even more that often that future is going to. You think you could plan for tomorrow because you think you know what tomorrow is going to look like, but then stuff happens in life, and the tomorrow you planned for today is not even the tomorrow that materialized. So you spend all of that time planning for something that didn't even come to fruition at the expense of maximizing your present. That's Rav Nachman. So the Gemara says, here's the difference in the cases. Hachi ashta, hasam bidida, bididei kaima. Both say in the sleep case, you control the circumstances. Di by mavriz nafshe bisilusa. Literally, you could prick yourself with thorns so you won't fall asleep. Hacha, Bidida kaimale grushay. We'll say over here, does she have control? If she marries Levi, does she have control that Levi is going to divorce her and then she's going to go ahead and marry Shimon? Of course not. Ela amar Rava. So we'll say finally, third iteration. Here we go. Harizulo tinase lo lo v'lo la'acher. But we'll say in reality, when Reuven says to Rachel, this is your get on the condition that you marry Shimon, really, Rachel can't get remarried with that get. Why not? Lolo, she can't marry Shimon. Why? Lolo tinase Shimon yor nishosehem nostim matana. She can't marry Shimon. Why? Doesn't look right. Doesn't look right. Right? At the end of the day, it looks like again, right? Reuven's gifting his wife to Shimon. Right? La'achar lo tinase debai kimul tinai. She also can't marry Levi. Why can't she marry Levi? There's a tanai. There's a tanai. So she's stuck. However, v'mises lo. But if she did end up marrying Shimon, lo teisei dimshum gzir l'mafkinon. If she married Shimon, I will say it's a valid marriage. It's a valid marriage. She doesn't have to leave it. La'achar. But if she marries Levi, teisei, she does have to leave that marriage. Why? Because ultimately, you're going to say, because that's like a shtickle adultery, not shtickle adultery, right? Because why? Because the get had a condition and she has not fulfilled the condition. Tanya Kavasi the Rava, we raise that supports Rava. So also when Reuven says to Rachel, this is your get on the condition that you marry Shimon. Hare zulo tinase lo v'lo la'achar. She really shouldn't remarry at all based on this get. Then nises lo, but if she married Shimon, lo teise, she doesn't have to leave the marriage. La'achar teise, but if she married someone else, she does have to leave the marriage. Incredible. And that is the halacha l'maisa on that sugya. Tanabanan. Some great cases. Reuven says to Rachel, this is your get on the condition that you ascend to the heavens. Ascend to the heavens. Okay? This is probably a bit more shayach, right? Or on the condition that you go to the Tahom, right? Go to the Tahom, right? The Tahom means the depths, right? So again, he says, so this is your get. So I will say these are impossible to know him. So the Gemara says, right? On the condition that you swallow a reed that is 4 amas long. Impossible. Bring me a reed that is 100 amas tall. Impossible. That you walk across the sea on your feet. Wrong religion, right? So I'll say, so Lamaisa, he gives her all these conditions that are obviously, again, impossible to fulfill. So what's the halacha? Ain't no get. So what says interesting? The Gemara says it's not a get. Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema Omer. So Tanakama holds it's not a get. It's not a get, invalid get. Why is it an invalid get? Because it has an invalid t'nai attached to it. The invalid t'nai, right, is essentially invalidates the entire get. Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema says, no, kazeh get. No, this is a good get. This is a good get. Why is it a good get? Klal Amar Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema, kol t'nai she'ef shelo l'kaimo b'sofo v'isla mitchila. So, eino ela kimafliga b'dvarim v'chasher. Because what Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema says essentially, when you attach an impossible tonight to a get, you know what we do with that tonight? You know what we do with it? We throw it out. We just look at it as some hyperbolic posturing, right? But it's really absolutely irrelevant. It's irrelevant. So I'll say the Lashon Rabbi Yehuda over here is very important. First, Rabbi Yehuda says, right? He says kazeh get. He says this is a get, right? This type of situation is a get, and then he espouses a t'nai. A klal. Right? What's the klal? What's the general rule? Any t'nai that is impossible to fulfill, we look at just as hyperbolic posturing, and therefore, ultimately, it's really void. The t'nai itself is really irrelevant, and the document, in this case, the get, will remain kosher. Incredible, I will say. Amar Nachman Amar Rav, halach Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema. Rav Nachman is saying, Rav da halacha follows Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema. That is the halacha, I will say, that anytime you have an impossible t'nai attached to a get, we look at the t'nai as just nothing, and the get ultimately again will remain valid. Incredible. So the Gemara says, Amrav Nachman bar Yitzchak masnisin namidega. Our Mishnah supports this as well. The Tani, kol she'efshar lo l'kaimo b'sofo, v'hisna la b'tchila. So t'nai kayim. Any type of t'nai, which you can fulfill, ultimately, again, the Tanai is valid. Ha'iyafshar, which you can infer from this, if you can't fulfill the Tanai, then Tanai batal, then the Tanai is batal, shmamina. So both say, so the Gemara actually concludes that the halacha allows Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema. This is very important, a very important halacha. So anytime husband makes a Tanai, and the Tanai is impossible to fulfill, we look at the Tanai, Rabbi say, again, just to be clear, impossible, not difficult, right? Impossible to fulfill, right? Swallow a reed that's 4 amos long, impossible. Carry me a reed that is 100 amos long, impossible. Go to the heavens, go to the Tahom, walk on water, impossible. Impossible. So Halacha says, not a Tanai, Tanai is void, get is valid. Incredible. What about the following case? We'll say, this is fascinating. Wow. This is your get on the condition you eat chazer. You eat chazer. What's the halacha? Amar Abaye, he. Rabbi Yehuda says, this is it. He also means this is exactly the case of Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema. This is an impossible Tanai. A Yid doesn't eat chazer, right? So for me, eating chazer is just as impossible as walking on water, right? So Lamaisa, again, that's the case. That's the case. In halacha Lamaisa, the Tanai will be void, right? And ultimately the get is good. Rava Amar Rava says, Afshar da achlav lakya. Rava says, no, she could eat chazer and get malchus. That's what I say. You could eat chazer, right? You could eat chazer and you get the punishment. So technically speaking, she can't fulfill Tanai. So in other words, we'll say, Rava is making a distinction between a Tanai that is impossible versus a Tanai that is possible but has ramifications. In other words, we'll say, telling her this is your get on the condition you walk on water, that's impossible. That's impossible. Saying this is your Tanai on the condition you eat chazer, that's possible. That's possible. Again, it's usher. You'll get malchus for it, but it's possible. So the Gemara says, La Abaye, according to Abaye, when Rabbi Yehuda said klal la sui basar chazer. So according to Abaye, when Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema espoused his principle came to include a case like chazer. Because Abaye says, impossibility includes that which is prohibited as well. If something is prohibited to me, it falls into the realm of impossible. L'Rava kazel lemeute basar chazer. According to Rava says no. When Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema said kazeh get means if the Tanai is impossible, then ultimately the Tanai is void. If the Tanai is possible, then ultimately the Tanai is extended. The Tanai ultimately again is in existence. So may say, Gemara is supposed to say fascinating machlokas. What's the interesting case? Reuven says to Rachel, divorcing his wife, right? This is your get on the condition you have relations with Shimon. So what's the halacha? Niskaima Tanai, harei get. If she fulfills the Tanai, the get is valid. Ve'im lav eino get, and if not, it's not a get. Almanas shaloti ba'ili la'abo la'avicha. What happens if he gives her a get and he says, this is your get on the condition that you don't have relations with my father or your father? So, okay, in choshishin shema nivala lahen. Ultimately, again, we're not choshesh. So again, the get is valid, and we're not choshesh that she engaged in any of these acts. V'ilu, yet what we infer from this is v'ilu al minas shetibayli la'abo la'avicha. Lo katani. I will say, interestingly enough, what's not included over here? What's not included over here is what if he said to her, this is your get on the condition that you have relations with my father or your father. To which the Gemara says, La Abaye necha, la Rav Akasha. According to Abaye, it makes sense why this is not included. Why? Because we'll say Abaye includes any case of Isser in the case of impossible. Rava does not. So according to Rava, technically speaking, could she have relations with her father, his father? She could. It's physically possible. So we'll say, in the case of basar chazer, we'll say she controls that. In other words, she could eat it and she can get malchus. Right? So even if it's a Tanai, this is your get on the condition that you have relations with Shimon. We'll say, assuming that there's not anything illicit here, she could give Shimon money. She could bribe Shimon to engage in the act of relations with her. El Abba va'avicha b'didak kaima. In a case of where she says have relations, he says have relations with my father, your father. Is that dependent on her? So he says well, so that's a pretty serious transgression. Even if she's willing, who's to say that her father or his father will be willing? In other words, it's not in her control. What Rava is suggesting over here, Rabbi say, is even though Rava says that Isser is not impossible, it's only a valid tonight when she controls the violation of the Isser. But if she doesn't control the violation of the Isser, then that falls into the realm of impossible. So I will say the Rava klal lasui abba va'avicha. According to Rava, when Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema said klal, that comes to include the case of abba and avicha. Kazeh lemiute basar chazer. Kazeh comes to exclude the case of basar chazer, that would be a valid tonight. We'll say pay dalad on days. La Abaye, according to Abaye, klal lasuye basar chazer. Abaye says klal comes to include the case of basar chazer, that it's not a proper tonight. Kazeh lemiute ploni, and Kazeh comes to exclude the case of ploni, where he says to her, this is your get on the condition that you have relations with ploni. Abaye would agree that such a case could be a valid tonight. So I will say, what we are left with, we are now on the second line of 84b, Pei Daled Amud Beis, and I will say what we are left with is something really interesting. So here's what everyone will agree with. Everyone will agree with Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema's klal, right? His klal is that if you attach an impossible tanai to a get, what's the status of the tanai? What's that? The tanai? Void. It's hyperbolic posturing, it's nothing, it's ridiculousness, right? It just falls off, we just ignore it as if it's not there. The interesting machlokes also between Abaye and Rava is what happens if he attaches a tanai that would cause her to violate an isser. Right? This is your get on the condition you eat chazer. You eat chazer. So Abaye will say, asr is the same thing as impossible. Rava says, Asr is not the same thing as impossible. Why? What's the definition of impossible? What's the definition of impossible? Impossible, right? Isser is possible. It just comes with ramifications. So both I said it's fascinating. Such a fundamental machlokes. Let's analyze it a bit more. Amud Beis. 84b, second line. So Nesi, the Gemara is Zekasha, Hare Zegitech Amanasha Tochli Basar Chazer. Right? This is your get on the condition that you eat Chazer. Vim Haisa Zara Amanasha Tochli with Truma. Or for that matter, again, let's say she's a non-Kohen, right? A non-Kohenes. And he says, this is your get on the condition you eat Truma. Vim Haisa Nazira Amanash Tishtiyayin. Or for that matter, again, she's a Nazira. She's in a zira, and he says, this is your get on the condition you drink wine. So we'll say in all of these cases, what's the halacha? Niskayim atnai, harei zaget. If you fulfill the tanai, the get is good. Ve'im lav, ain't no get. And if not, it's not a get. So we'll say, the Rava necha, la ba'e kasha. According to Rava, this is perfect, right? This makes sense. Why? We'll say, because according to Rava, what does Rava say? Rava says, asr is not impossible. Asr is not impossible. And therefore, in all the cases, Rabbi say, could the Nazir drink wine? Is she able to drink wine? Yes. Is the non-Kohenes, is the Israelis able to eat Truma? Yes. Right? Is she able to eat Chazer? Yes. So therefore, again, technically speaking, these Tinaim can be fulfilled. And therefore, again, non-compliance, it's not impossible. Therefore, the Tanai is a valid Tanai, and non-compliance causes the get to be void. La Abaye Kasha. We'll say, according to Abaye, this poses a contradiction, because Abaye holds that Asr is the equivalent of impossible. Do you think this price reflects the view of everyone? So the Gemara says, Hamani Rabbanani. This is the view of the Rabbanan. So I will say, this is such an incredible musar. What Abaye will say is, Abaye says, I accept the fact that not everyone agrees with me. In other words, you're bringing up Brisa. I understand the Brisa. That's fine. I can explain to you. The Brisa reflects the opposing view. That's it. So again, the Brisa doesn't pose a problem to me, right? The Brisa, I'll admit, there is another view out there. The Brisa is part of the Brisa. What an incredible Musar Haskell. We'll say, imagine if we actually operated this way in life and not just on the pages of Gemara, accepting the fact that there are opposing views, right? See, I was saying, when you're comfortable in your own skin and you're comfortable with your own hashkafas and you're comfortable with your own outlooks and you're comfortable with your own ideas, you're also comfortable with the fact that other people believe differently. Hey, I would say the only time people feel threatened by opposing views is when they're not confident enough in their own. If you're confident in you, I'm okay with other people disagreeing. I'm okay with other people having different ashkafas, different outlooks, different isms, different this. Fine, go, whatever. I know for me what is the truth, and I know what is. So we'll say, what's happening? What's happening in this Gemara? Abaye is confident in his position. He's so confident that he's able to say, of course, there are other opinions. There's another brisa, and that brisa is not my opinion. But the good news is, I'm comfortable enough in me, I'm confident enough in me that I could also accept the fact that other views exist. Incredible. The Seifok lay the Torah. Okay, so now the Gemara says, so let's take a step back. Let's focus on the Chazer case for a little bit, right? So Reuven says to Rachel, this is your get on the condition that you eat Chazer. So remember again, so Abaye says, Asr is equivalent to impossible. Rava says, no, it isn't, because this lamaise is possible. So that's our machlokes. Sigmar says, but I have a more fundamental question. Why isn't this a problem of masna amasha kasav batorah? Well, see, in general, when you make a t'nai, which runs contrary to Torah law, what's the halacha? V'chala masna amasha kasav batorah t'no batal. Well, so we have a general principle that says, whenever you make a t'nai, which runs contrary to Torah law, your t'nai is batal. Your Tanai is batal. So I don't understand. So Reuven says to Rachel, this is your get on the condition that you go ahead and you eat basar chazer, right? You eat chazer, that is a Tanai which runs contrary to Torah law. So why don't we just say automatically that is batal? So this is very interesting. When do we say that when you make a Tanai, which runs contrary to Torah law, the Tanai is batal? Kigon sheira ksusa va'onasa. So I will say the paradigmatic case of that is actually very interesting. Is where it will say she'er ksus and ona represent the three obligations that a husband has to his wife in marriage. She'er is clothing. She'er is mizonos, is sustenance. Ksus is clothing. Ona is physical intimacy. Let's say a man says to his wife, "Hareat nikudeshasli almanas she'in lech alai she'er ksus and ona." Man says to his wife, "This is you, right? We're married on the condition that you have no claim, right, for she'er ksus and ona on me." So we'll say, what's the halacha in such a situation like that? It's eina mikudeshas. Why? Because she's masna amasha kasav batorah, right? So the Gemara says when we say masna amasha kasav batorah, ultimately, the paradigmatic example of that is like in a case of kiddushin. In the case of kiddushin, where ultimately, again, he's trying to betroth her, but trying to betroth her without the fundamental tenets of marriage. Dehu ka'akar. We'll say, in other words, why is this the paradigm? Because we'll say in this case, he's the one uprooting the biblical law, right? So he says to her, here's the case of kiddushin, and you are mikudeshes to me on the condition that you have no biblical claims against me that normally come with marriage. So such a Tanai is batal. Why is it batal? Because he's actively uprooting biblical law. Now we'll say, watch this. Tahu ka'akar. Aval hacha ihi ka'akra. Now we'll say, this is incredible. Over here, he's not uprooting Torah law. Now we'll say, who's going to end up uprooting Torah law? She does. They will say, so this is actually fascinating. Let's take a step back over here. There's a concept, masna masha kasav batorah. Right, when you make a condition that runs contrary to Torah law, so what's the halacha? Your Tanai is batal. They'll say, when is that true? The Gemara says, when is that true? That's true when the one who is making the Tanai is the one who's actively uprooting the law as well. So the Tanai maker is the one who through his Tanai himself or herself actively uproots biblical law. So a paradigmatic example of that, Reuven says to Rachel, you're married to me on the condition that you have no claims for sustenance, clothing, or intimacy. So that Tanai is batal. Tanai is batal because Reuven, you're actively uprooting biblical law. We will say that's different than this case. Right? Reuven says to Rachel, this is your get on the condition that you eat chazer. I will say, who's making the Tanai? Reuven. Who's uprooting the Tanai? I'm sorry, say, who's uprooting biblical law? Rachel. It's a fascinating technicality. So in other words, everyone will subscribe to the concept that masna amasha kasa bator tano batal. When you make a tanai, which runs contrary to Torah law or uproots Torah law, your tanai is batal. But that's only true if the person who's making the tanai is the one who's actively uprooting the law. In this case over here, fascinatingly enough, he's making the tanai, but she's the one doing the avera, right? By even the chazer, she's the one uprooting the law. That's not the concept. So the Gemara says, "Ki amrina masna mashchas batorah tano batal." I'm sorry. Good. Ela Amar Ravina says, "Ki amrina masna mashchas batorah tano batal." When do we say that when you make a tanai which runs contrary to Torah law, your tanai is batal? Ki gon sherik susava onasa devadai ka'akra. We'll say furthermore. When do we say mas? Did I skip? Yeah. Okay. Maskif Ravina. Sorry. So Ravina raised the kasha. He says, 1 second. Klum ka'akra i elekiyume tnai day. That's not fair. That's not fair. Why is she uprooting Torah law, right? Why is she in chazer? Why is she in chazer? Why? Because the tnai that he made, right? She's not stam going to go ahead. Right, going to eat chazer on her own. The only reason she's eating chazer is because of the tanai that he made. So the Gemara says, ka'akar. I think that's still called that he's uprooting biblical law. Ravina says, when do we say that that when you make a tanai which runs contrary to Torah law, that your tanai is batal? When is that? Gon sherik susava onasa devadai ka'akar. So I will say that's in a case where ultimately, again, the Tanai will definitely uproot Torah law. We'll say, take a quick look at Rashi, last wide line on the top. Devadai ka'akar, shaymasar la kiddushin. Remember, in this case over here, he already gave her kesef kiddushin. V'harei hi ishto l'schayev bekulan. And then I will say, what happens? He gives her the kesef kiddushin. She accepts the kesef kiddushin. He says, this is your kiddushin on the condition ultimately, again, that you have no claim of shir ksus and ona. So technically speaking, the only way for her to be married to him, ultimately, again, is through the negation of this biblical precept. So the Gemara says, however, Rabbi says she does have a choice in the get case. What's her choice? Don't get divorced. That is what we'll say. It's not the pshat that she has to eat the chazer. She only has to eat the chazer if she wants a divorce. There's another option. What's the other option? Stay married. So we'll say that's the distinction also. When do we say masna mashakasa batar tina batal? That's when, by definition, there's no choice but the negation of a Torah precept. So, for example, if he gave her the kesef kiddushin, she accepted the kesef kiddushin, and then he attaches the tanai. Ultimately, the only way they're married is halacha l'maisa if she goes ahead and then there's violation of a biblical precept. In this case over here, it says this is your get on the condition that you go out and you eat chazer. Okay, this one, option one is eat chazer. Option two is don't eat chazer. Okay, I understand by not eating chazer they remain married, but that ultimately still remains a viable option. And therefore, halacha l'maisa, the tanai, as much as it runs contrary to biblical law, does not automatically become void. A fascinating distinction. So the Gemara goes weiter. So it says, so remember again, in the case, so back to the Mishnah. So remember again, back to our original case, Reuven says to Rachel, this is your get on the condition. Oh, excuse me. This is your get, and you are permitted to every man except for Shimon. So remember again, Rabbi Eliezer said that the get is a valid get. Ultimately, again, the Rabbanon say it's an invalid get. We already established how you pass like the Rabbanon. So there is a way to remedy this get. How do you remedy the get? So the Gemara says, what should you do? Take the get back, and give it to her again, this time without a t'nai. To which the Gemara says, Man Tana, who is the Tana? So Amar Chizkiya Rav Shimon Elazar, he decided Rav Shimon Elazar Omer, Ad Shiyit Lena Himenu, V'yachzar V'yitnen Allah. Take the get back and re-give it to her. V'yomer La Hagitech, right? And go ahead and say, this is your get. Rabbi Yochanan says, Afilu Tema Rebbe, it could even be Rebbe. Tilchon Amar Shani Hacha Hoilu Knasali Pasabal the Kuhuna. It could even be Rebbe because your Tana ultimately said that case is different. The previous case we discussed is different. Why? Because ultimately, again, she acquired it at least enough to be invalidated for the kahuna. Again, I will say, so halacha l'maisa, what we're saying is, when you gave a get with this invalid tanai, that this is only your get. If you don't marry Shimon, chutz mi-Shimon, ultimately, again, it could be remedied by taking the get back, giving it again a second time. Kasvu b'socho. And I will say, up until now, we were talking about the fact that this tanai was verbal. What happens if you actually wrote, right? Hari'at mutaras l'chol adam chutz mi-Shimon in the get? That's going to be much more problematic. Says the Gemara. Let's analyze. Amar Rav Safra, Kasu b'socho. Tanan, Rav Safra said, ultimately again, if the condition was written in the get, that would mamish invalidate the get. Tush Gemara says, Pshit, that's obvious, Kasu b'socho Tanan. It says that. That's what it said in the Mishnah. Tush Gemara says, what would you have thought? Hanimi la'achar toref. I would have thought, ultimately again, when is writing the condition in the get problematic? Only if you inserted it after the Torah. Well, remember again, a get, this goes back to, we had this in a little early on in the Masechta, a get has two parts to it, a Torah and a tofes. The Torah, will say, or I should say, the tofes is like the boilerplate. It's this thing that's the part that's the same in every single get. The Torah contains the couple specific information. So it says like this, I might have thought, when you write the condition in the get, so writing it in the get is problematic, even if you write it in after the Torah. In other words, after the primary part of the get. Aval lifnei Torah, afilu al peh nami pasal. Let's say, but let's say the condition is espoused before the Torah, I would have thought to say that maybe in that case, even if you just verbally say the condition, but it's being stated before the Torah was written, maybe that invalidates the entire get. Kamash Malon, no. Kamash Malon say that halacha l'maisa, the only time that the get itself becomes an invalidated instrument is when the condition itself of chutz mi-Shimon is actually written in the get itself. Rava says, Lo shanu ela la'achar Torah. We've only learned after the Torah. Aval lifnei Torah afilu al peh nami pasal. Comes along, Rava says it's pretty dramatic. Rava says not true. When do we say ultimately again that the get is not invalidated? That's only ultimately again if the Tanai is stated or written after the Torah. Aval lifnei Torah, Rava say if the Tanai itself is either written in the get before the Torah, or even articulated before the Torah, that will invalidate the get. That's pretty incredible. Rava goes according to his reasoning. This. Rava said to the people who write the get, Rava said this is incredible. Rava used to say, he would say to the Sovrim writing the get, tell the husband to be quiet until the Torah is written. So let me explain to what's happening over here. So according to Rava like this. According to Rava, the Torah has to be written. It has to be written without any Tanai spoken out or any Tanai written in. And according to Rava, if the husband goes ahead and makes an invalid Tanai before or during the writing of the Torah, that will actually invalidate the get, even though, again, nothing is written in the get itself. All the more so, if something invalidating is written into the Torah itself, it will invalidate the get. Therefore, Rava said, this is incredible. Rava would say, halacha l'maisa, when writing the get, tell the Sofrim, tell the husband to be quiet. The good news is, once the Torah, which contains the couple-specific information, is written, we're good. Then if the husband espouses any other Tanaim, it's not going to invalidate the get in here. So we'll stop over here for today. We'll pick up Emirat Hashem with this piece of Emirat Hashem tomorrow. Again, getting more into the specifics regarding the writing of the get. That's going to lead into the next mission as well. Shkoyach.